It's not easy following President Biden. I mean, it's not always easy following what he's saying. Can we just acknowledge how refreshing it is to see a president of the United States at an event that doesn't begin with a bailiff saying, "All rise"? My Weekend Update co-anchor, Michael Che, was going to join me here tonight, but in solidarity with President Biden, I decided to lose all my black support. Trump's two attacks on President Biden are that he's a senile old man and a criminal mastermind. I don't know any criminal masterminds who bike to get ice cream. Also, it's not like Trump himself is young and sharp.
I mean, Scarlett Johansson's husband, or Colin Jost, ribbing both President Biden and former President Trump during this White House Correspondents' dinner monologue. Biden also delivered a hit on President Trump verbally and his own age.
I had a great stretch since the State of the Union. Well, Donald has had a few tough days lately. You might call it stormy weather. Of course, the 2024 election is in full swing. And yes, age is an issue. I'm a grown man running against a 6-year-old. My wife Jill was with me tonight, was worried how I do. I told her, don't worry, just like riding a bike. She said, that's what I'm worried about.
I like humor that's self-deprecative, right? Oh, look, there's a video. Remember that? He was going about a mile per hour and fell over. That last jab about himself was a reference to his infamous bike fall in Delaware in 2022. One panel on another network straight up gushed over Biden's performance.
Just like last year, just like he does at the State of the Unions, he steps up for these big events. He proves that he is sharp and gets it.
The call to action was impressive.
I think that he showed that he was the adult in the room.
So much love. Well, the former president, with quite a different take, posted this. The dinner was really bad. Colin Jost bombed, and Crooked Joe was an absolute disaster. Doesn't get much worse than this. Tammy Bruce, Fox News contributor. Patrick Murphy, former Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania and former U.S. Undersecretary of the Army. Great to see you both.
Thank you, ma'am.
How do you think that the ribbing turned out for the president? Because there was some information in there for him, perhaps.
There was, but look, there's, I think, an understanding that you've got to make fun of it. You've got to kind of own it, like it's no big deal. You can laugh. You've got a good sense of humor, which is important for people to realize. But no voter, in dealing with the current economic situation and the crime, is going to think when they're in the voting booth, yeah, but that White House Correspondents' dinner was so good. Oh, yeah, I'm going to vote for that guy. It's not going to happen. Now, his numbers, for a new Gallup poll, he is at the lowest approval rating of any president at this time in the last 70 years. State of the Union address, he didn't fall down. That was good. It did not help him. So worse than Nixon, worse than Carter. Now, that's one thing. It's what people do in the voting booth, but Colin Jost is not going to make the difference for him.
So it's interesting. I mentioned that I thought there was some information in some of that, you know, kind of back and forth about Trump and Biden by Colin Jost. He hit Biden pretty hard, though, on something that I don't know that he can make the difference of. He's losing black voters. That, to me, it wasn't funny as much as it was sad. And what do you do if you're Biden?
Well, I thought that was a very good one. I agree with Tammy's point. First off, Joe Biden, self-deprecating. He takes the job seriously. He doesn't take himself seriously, and that is charming, right? And I've never been to the nerd prom. That's what they call it. And I've
been many times.
Right? But I would say to you, like, the American people don't really care. Political people care about it. Right. But it is, though, a celebration of our Constitution, of the Bill of Rights, of the freedom of the press. And that's a good thing. And there's a contrast. I mean, Donald Trump didn't go for the 4 years he was president, and Joe Biden shows up because he wants to give it proper respect.
I don't know if that's necessarily good. I think, but a lot of people, a lot of Americans cringe when we see the people who are supposed to be holding those people to account. And they're hugging each other, and they're having a good time, and they're like a group, and they're like family. I think it's important that that separation remain. So that is one of the cringe factors of, is this why we've got the problem that we have, is that they're pals and they're not really doing a job. And yet they were very critical in going after Trump, and it made that event, inhospitable for him, which perhaps is the way it should be with media.
Interesting. All right, we'll move forward. A new poll is bad news for President Biden. It shows Donald Trump with a sizable lead over the president, 49 to 43%. That is outside the margin of error, people. Possibly even worse news, though. The same poll finds voters turning against Biden. 61% say his term is a failure. And as he slips in the polls, President Biden is bringing out the big guns, the big names. We've seen them all before, and he keeps trying this. I don't know. It's whatever. He joined his two Democratic predecessors who will outshine him with Feel My Pain. And the like. President Clinton and Obama in a podcast recorded at the end of March. Here's a bit from Biden.
I go to all these conferences that we all know, and Bill just came back from one on his own. Great help to us in the Caribbean. And, you know, almost every single time, not a joke, guys, whether it's the G7, the G20, all these heads of state, they'll wait till they can get me alone and grab my arm and say, you've got to win. Yeah, because, quote, my democracy is at stake. Yeah. Their democracy.
Patrick.
I think that's true. I think we have to pay attention to what the rest of the world feels, but it's all about America. And I think what these polls and other things show you is that we're 6 months away from Election Day, but in Pennsylvania, just last week, we had our primary. People aren't paying attention that there is a protest vote against President Trump. Nikki Haley in Pennsylvania, last Tuesday, 17% of the vote went to Nikki Haley. 7% went for Dean Phillips on Biden's side. So that's a 10-point swing. It's going to be nip and tuck in Pennsylvania and these major 6 swing states. And it's going to be nip and tuck for the next 6 months.
As Tammy answers, can we put those polling numbers back up? 43, 49%. Tammy.
Well, of course, national polls don't matter when it comes to the election itself, but it does tell you about the mood of the country. And when you see what matters with all the polls is the trajectory. Is the natural, whether it's a swing state or otherwise, you see it continual, you see it kind of matching the same mood of the country, the trajectory, no matter where people are. And I think that's what you can take from this. And that's what the campaign should take from it. But no other president in the last 70 years has been in the position of disapproval as Biden is right now.
The people I would just say the people have been through the ringer after COVID. They are hurting out there, and they don't feel settled. And that's what you're seeing in these numbers.
This president declared COVID gone right after he got into office. By the way, the margin of error was a little bit more than that 6-point spread between the two men.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.